Good evening, everyone. My name's Simon. This is James. This is our first unscripted podcast, untitled. Let's just see how it goes.
So yeah, I'm James. Welcome to the Ski Exchange podcast. As Simon said, it's the first time we're going to do this, and so we'll see how it goes. We're going to launch 6 of these across the season. So starting tonight, we're going to focus on like a Seasonaire chat. So what do Seasonaires need? What are the must-haves? What are the considerations? And then in December, we'll talk about ski boots. January, we'll talk about skis. February, we'll talk about ski touring and avalanche safety. March will be a GB ski test special, live from the Alps. And then April, we'll talk about spring skiing and summer racing. So there are kind of 6 that we've planned across. So this is our little intro on the first one. So thanks for joining us. The idea behind this is just to give you guys a little bit more information using our knowledge that we've kind of gained over the years. Certainly Simon's been here for a long time at the Ski Exchange, pretty much all of his adult life. And I've lived and breathed skiing since I could get on the skis, really. So we're here just to give advice. Some of the things we say are our opinion. They might not always be right, but we will kind of give you the best advice we can. If there's any topics you'd like us to cover, or if you've got any questions, pop them in the comments and we'll come back to you. Like and subscribe if you like what we're doing, and follow us on our other channels across Facebook, TikTok, and the rest of them, Instagram and more. Yeah. We get started with this week's podcast. So we're going to talk about Seasonaires and kind of what is a must-have thing for Seasonaires. And you've done a few seasons, haven't you, mate?
Yes, many years ago. New Zealand, France, and America. And back in the 90s, while still working here, I went out to New Zealand and then did a winter in Colorado. And yeah, very good time. Only feels like a few years ago, but it was over a quarter of a century ago somehow.
And what was your favourite part of your seasons?
The drinking. It's just an experience. I was lucky enough when I went to New Zealand that I was on full salary from here and I had a job there. So it was the first and only time in my life that I felt rich. So I got to ski all day. I worked tuning skis in the evening. So I generally worked first thing in the morning, helping people with rental skis, then in the evening tuning the skis, so I could still ski all day and still go out in the evenings, and had a nice flat in Queenstown on the South Island. And it wasn't the best year for snow, but it was just a great time. Yeah, I was 23, 24, and it was awesome. And then followed by going out to Colorado to Copper Mountain. So it's got to be done. If you don't do it this year, you'll be a year older when you finally do it.
That sounds horrendous. And before people ask, we don't have any jobs going where you can go and do a season and get paid all summer anymore, right?
No, not here.
I died in the 90s.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. And I did 3 seasons in Chamonix when I was younger. Not as exciting as going to New Zealand and Colorado and experiencing all of that. So that's where some of that expertise of going over to those other markets and living there is really going to come in handy during the next kind of 10, 15 minutes or so. The idea behind the podcast is we're not going to take too much of your time, maybe 20 minutes maximum, and you can skip through the bits you don't like. So first things first, what's the one thing that you've probably forgot when you were doing a season that you wish you'd have had?
Duct tape.
Yep.
Duct tape is such a simple thing, and it's just so handy. It's one of the first things I bought when I got out there. I tore my ski jacket. You can repair your ski wear, you can repair your luggage. If your boots leak, you can cover up the toes, and just duct tape is so simple, but I thought it was such an important thing to have.
And you can tie your friends to lampposts.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's all sorts of things you can do, but definitely that's a very simple non-ski related thing that we don't sell, but I would always take a reel of duct tape with me. Okay,
fine. And then from things that we do sell, what do you think that you might have missed, like ski-wise?
Well, back then, this is when we skied along skinny straight skis. We didn't quite have the quivers, the choice that we do nowadays, So especially when I was in America, I was skiing on a 2 metre straight skinny K2 ski. I think nowadays I'd like to have had a 2-ski quiver. I'd like to have had a nice pieced carve, detuned race ski, and then something big, fat, twin tipped for all mountain. But back in the day, we didn't have those options, and maybe even 2 pairs of boots. But you got to transport all the stuff there. But I think 2 skis would have been ideal.
Yeah, okay. So you did all your seasons just with 1 pair of skis?
Yeah.
See, that's where I guess I was quite lucky, is I had always at least 3 pairs of skis, plus then some demo skis in the rental shop at disposal. So you got that opportunity to do a different ski on different conditions. But real skiers take 1 ski, right?
Well, absolutely. If you've learned to ski deep powder on a 2 metre ski that's about 65 mil at the tip, then you can pretty much ski anything.
That's true.
But life's easier and it's more fun nowadays. It's much easier skiing, and there's a lot more choice out there.
Yeah, and we'll get into the different types of skis. We've got a few behind us to talk about, and we'll get into that a little bit. So kind of one of the main things that you're going to have, as Simon mentioned there when he mentioned duct tape, is you're going to have a few things break or go wrong, etc. So it's good to make sure that you've got good gear. One of the things obviously you need as a Seasonaire is clothing. So we tend to use shell stuff here, right? Most of the time, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it's just very versatile. You know, if you're out there for a season, you can have very, very extremes from very, very cold early season and hopefully some really nice warm spring weather. Heavily insulated jackets, obviously great at the early part of the season, but later in the season, they can get really, really hot. So personally, I prefer a shell. We predominantly sell insulated jackets, but I think, you know, for a Seasonaire, personally, I'd be going towards a shell and then layering up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of us pretty much in the industry use shell, and if you're going to live out in the resort and you're skiing all season, as Simon mentioned, get very cold and get very warm. This is just one of the jackets I grabbed from upstairs. This is kind of, would you say, like the heaviest you would have in terms of you have insulation?
Yeah, got light insulation in there.
So this has a very light insulation, so you could spring in the ski time with just like a t-shirt or a thin base layer with this on top. But generally, this is the heaviest type of weight you'd want. This is just a lightweight insulation in there if you do want the insulated jacket. But generally for Seasonaires, we'd recommend that you have shell and then you have layering underneath, and then you can layer as much as you do or don't need, especially if you're teaching, right? Because if you're teaching, you're going to be like standing around sometimes.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be with a class of kids where you're doing lots and it's heavy work and you're going to get quite hot and sweaty. So having the right kit is really, really important. From
I think one of the other things as well is having less jackets. People want to take 2 or 3 jackets with them, which are very bulky, and you only end up wearing one. So I'd say less jackets and more socks, maybe two or three pairs of gloves. You know, gloves do get trashed, they do get wet, so having maybe 2 pairs is a great thing. Or even a mitten, you know, for early season cold conditions, a nice insulated mitten and then a second pair of gloves rather than 2 jackets or 3 jackets. You know, layers, but certainly socks. Especially if you want to keep friends all season, you know, having a good rotation of ski socks is quite important.
Yeah, I mean, as people who only follow us on TikTok or whatever will know that I'm a big sock fan, and having the right socks is really important, but also for the right weather, because if you find that it's really, really cold, and again, you're maybe going slow speeds, maybe you're teaching a beginner group, you're going to want a sock that's going to give you a little bit more warmth, but as you're skiing and you're more active, or it's springtime skiing, you're going to want something that's a little bit less bulky, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and based on the fit of your boots too. Cool. So yeah, clothing, really important. That the jacket, we start with that, but the same with pants. You know, having a shell pant over an insulated pant gives you that flexibility as well. And then the other thing you really need is a really decent, I always find, and something I noticed in my season, I went through quite a few of them, was a decent pair of goggles.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, sunglasses, you know, again, it was very much a, you know, back in the day, we didn't wear helmets, we had goggles, I had sunglasses. If the sun was out, you'd be in sunnies. Whereas nowadays, most people sensibly are wearing helmets. Goggles work better with helmets. You know, whether you wear it with the strap underneath or over the top, it's totally up to you. And the versatility of goggles, you know, again, back in the day, we had goggles and they were for flat light. They were no good in bright sunshine. Whereas nowadays, the goggles, you know, we have reactive lenses, photochromic lenses, and interchangeable goggles. So, you know, a decent quality double glazed goggle, I'd say, is an essential. Something that works well with your helmet so you don't get that big gap at the top there. And yeah, at least one decent pair of goggles, ideally with interchangeable lenses or a reactive lens.
You mentioned the strap, actually, I'm going to stop you on the under the helmet. What do you think of that trend?
It's ridiculous. I think more and more people now are going the other way. You know, there were goggles, straps, Velcro ones designed so you could wear them more comfortably underneath. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
One guy on the X Games with his helmet strap under the helmet, and then every school kid wants.
And the thing is, you know, all the athletes now, they're all sponsored. They've got to have the goggles on show, so you know it's over the top. But they just sit better. But you know, if you want to be different, then fine. You know, as long as you're protecting your eyes.
Yeah, this is true. So when it comes to goggles, one of my favourite ones that we have here at the shop, and the reason for that is because it kind of does everything that Simon said. So is one of our headless goggles. This is the one with the GB strap, and this has kind of a real quick magnetic interchange. It doesn't have to be headless, of course, but it should be. And then you've got this real quick magnetic interchange. You can take off your sunny lens and you can just whack on your clear lens, or your light yellow lens. So for low light conditions or when it's sunny, you can do a real quick interchange. You can keep that in your pocket. You can keep it in like a nice little pouch like that. So personally, I've always liked having that kind of interchange goggle as opposed to anything majorly photochromic. I like a photochromic lens as my main lens, but I like to be able to change it as well at the same time.
I think also with the photochromic, trying them in the shop is all very well and good, but there's definitely a slight delay with photochromic lenses when when it's really, really cold. It does take a few seconds for the lenses to adjust. So particularly if you're going in a shady area through trees and things like that, it does take a while for the lenses to catch up. There are exceptions. I mean, the new head goggles that we've done a TikTok on recently, that is an instant thing and works very, very well. But, if you've got one goggle, you've only got space for it, you only want to carry one, then the photochromic, it does work really well. There are limitations. Interchangeable lenses are fantastic, but of course you've got to carry the second lens with you as well.
Yeah, one of the tips for the photochromic lenses, particularly if it's cold, because that's when it takes a little bit longer to change its light, is if it's really sunny day, but you're going to go skiing in the trees, etc., don't leave your goggles on top of your helmet because they will point right at the sun and that will darken them. What you want to do is either put a cover on them, like a, what do they call them?
Goggle sock.
Goggle sock, that's the one. Goggle sock over the top, then that will keep the lens a little bit lighter. Then when you put it down here, you'll see more. If it's very sunny, it might feel a bit bright until it gets a bit darker, but that will keep that lens kind of more in the kind of tree vision, if you like, where there's less light coming in. That's one tip that I've done with photochromic. However, you mentioned the head goggle. You've got it down there. Oh. I am a complete convert. This is the goggle.
It's not going to work inside, but there are plenty of videos of it. So I got given a pair on our ski test in March. And tried it out, and there's been various comments about this is old technology. It's not, it's new technology. I mean, I've been using goggles for 30 years. I've tried them all, but this was the one that is instant. During a normal day, you don't really notice the change in the lens, but through trees or if it gets very, very cloudy, it's instant, and suddenly you can make out the terrain. You're not squinting at all. It is superb. It's expensive, but maybe this is the game changer. In future, goggles are all going to start using this sort of technology or something similar. Basically, there's a sensor here. In bright sunshine, the lens goes dark, and then as soon as it gets overcast, like in a split second, it lightens up. Again, lots of people say, no, it's old tech, but it's not. This is different to anybody else. I'm sure this technology will be available in various other guises going forward, but this is kind of like the genesis of this lens. There's nothing else like it, and it's incredible. But again, over £300, you could have 4 pairs of goggles in your pocket for every single light condition going. But this is the one ski quiver. Yeah,
and that's the idea about being a Seasonaire, is you don't want to be having like so much kit, and you want to try and keep it like as low as you can in terms of your kit pile. And so if you're just looking for like one awesome pair of goggles, that absolutely has to be on the list of considerations. I was a massive skeptic, but it's a game changer. And then I love the comments on TikTok though. We had like the guy who said, I've had a pair of these from Decathlon for 10 years and I charged them up with my USB. It's like, there's no charging in this, my friend.
No. And the snow doesn't stick to it. That was another comment. We used it in all conditions. The guys that had, really kindly gave us a set to try. And the only reason I did a video was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Every so often you get something within our industry that's like, oh my god, this is a game changer. And that tech, I've used other lenses that have made those claims. And obviously when photochromic first came out, that was like, oh, that's great. And in the shop it's fantastic. But then in the real world, you do notice the delay. Whereas with this system, you don't.
Yeah. So far, other than the paracetamol for the hangovers, of course, you've got good clothing, good gloves, good socks, good goggles, obviously combined with a decent helmet. Based on the goggle chat, obviously you're going to be in the sun quite a bit. And something that maybe we don't talk about enough in skiing sometimes is sun cream. And if you're going to spend all season out on the mountains and facing that really strong sunlight, you don't want to end up looking like a prune. You don't want to look like your nan at 25. So you talk about sun cream a lot with school kids. What's the biggest issue you get with skiing?
I think the biggest problem we get is people not reapplying. I mean, high factor sun cream is important, but reapplying is the most important thing. There's lots of creams that claim, you put it on once and don't need to reuse it. But personally, I think, a minimum, especially if you burn quite easily, a minimum of factor 30, maybe up to a factor 50. And just think about what's exposed to the elements. So there's bits of your neck that, if it is sunny, the sun will reflect off the snow and you'll get burnt in places you'd never expect. So, put your kit on, put your helmet on, and just think, right, cheeks, around the neck, make sure that's all covered. Lip balm, just constantly, all day, just every so often when you're on the lifts, just keep that going. And a high factor cream is important, but reusing it is even more so. And if it's not sunny and it's windy and it's cold, your face will get chapped, and the cream really does help. You'll still get a cool goggle tan, everybody does, but sun cream is really, really important. If you're fair skinned, it's an absolute must. And even in extreme conditions, balaclavas, the net gaiters, turtle furs, things like that, you can pull that up over your face if you're on the chairlift and it's freezing cold, particularly if there's wind. Wind is the real killer, but you do need to protect your face, the tip of your nose and things like that. They can get burnt, and even extreme cases get frostbite as well. So yeah, absolutely, cream's important. There's loads and loads of different creams out there, but a high factor waterproof sun cream is the key. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have one with a nice easy applicator here because I quite like that. So you could just a little sponge and you can get it on, so you have to take all your gloves off and everything else. Yeah, slightly boring, perhaps, maybe not the most exciting thing for Seasonaires, but you'll spend all season out there. It's actually a really important part of the kit list. And then, of course, post-skiing, we're still on the kind of stuff you put on your body as such, then you've got to have some après footwear, right?
Absolutely. I mean, people wear the moon boots, they're not that practical, but they're good in soft snow. If you're working in a chalet and you've got to take the bins out and things like that, you can literally just slide, something like these little booties on. They're good, but they're not hiking boots. Personally, I would take out, some trainers, just for normal use. And then if you've got some hiking boots and something a bit more serious, then it's worth taking them. But certainly sort of in and around a chalet or getting to and from work, where you've got a couple 100 metres, you've got all your ski kit as well. A little slide on waterproof bootie is absolutely fine. Ugg boots and that sort of thing, they're okay. I mean, the problem is Ugg boots are expensive. They do get tide marks really, really easily because they're sort of suede-y and you get all the salt. They can ruin them, and they're not always the most grippy. So, something's got a good grippy sole, but also looks quite cool. I mean, if you think they look cool, some people do, some people don't. And but they're handy. It's just like you can just have them by the back door, just slide them on. If you've got to go outside 6 steps, it's just better than putting your trainers back on. So, quite
maybe
handy.
I'm too old for the pink ones now, but I still quite like these. I think, again, if you're going to have like one type of shoe, it's insulated, it's got a bit of grip on it. Like you say, you can put it on in and out the chalet. You can wear it all night if you want. Like you said, I have a pair of like Salomon like hiking mids that I use if I'm going to do any walking out there. But yeah, this is the type of thing I live in all the time. So decent pair of après shoes is always good. And then, we can talk about products all day. We're not going to talk about too much, just a few of the kind of essentials, must-haves and whatnot. Obviously, if you're going out all season and you're skiing, you're going to need some ski poles. One of my personal favourites is the Dioram poles. And the reason for that is if you're going to take one set of poles and you're going to do a whole season, you probably want that it's adjustable. So if you're obviously ski touring or you're going to ski off-piste, then you've got that ability to make the pole longer or shorter as required. And obviously if you're teaching, you can use it for different things as well. And then with the Dioram, of course, you're doing a whole season, so you're going to want to film yourself. And with this pole, you can obviously mount the camera on the top and mount it on there. Anything that, do you ever think about ski poles when you did your ski season?
No.
No.
Times have changed. Generally we just stole them. But don't do that. But yeah, having a pole, something like that, is practical. You don't know the situation when you go out there. You might get into filming, you may not. Personally, it's not something that really appealed to me. But times have changed, and the Dioram pole, you can connect GoPros and phones and things like that to it.
We didn't have mobile phones when you did ski seasons.
No, it's also true. So So we just drew sketches. But
I had a Nokia on my first ski season. Yeah, but I had to bite the aerial when I was anxious.
Yeah, and he charged it at the start of the season.
Exactly. Yeah, charged it at the start of the season. It was still had battery by the end. So we're going to do a whole session about this later in the year on our February chat. But this a couple of little things you should consider if you're going to do a ski season, because we're going to assume, like we did, that you're doing a ski season, you're going to get a powder day, and you're going to go and ski powder, because why wouldn't you? You'd be mad not to. Right?
Well, you've got to experience it.
Yeah, I think so. So. I can't imagine doing a ski season and going, no, I'm going to stick on the piste.
Well,
anyway, some real basic essentials when it comes to that, and we'll go into more detail on the chat in February, but it's a transceiver, shovel and probe. So if you're skiing off piste, if you get buried, you can be found with the transceiver, you can be located with the probe, and you can be dug out with the shovel. And all these modern ones are really easy to use, right?
They are. I mean, and you don't necessarily have to buy one. You just got to know how it works. A transceiver nowadays is very easy to use. But you've got to think of, if there's a group of 4 of you skiing off piste, do you all know how the transceiver works? Because if one of you does get buried, and it's an emergency situation, if that's the person that knows how everything works, then they're kind of screwed. So, if you're using transceivers, be it Autovox or whoever, you've got to know how it's working. So if you're hiring it, just make sure you know what you're doing, because you may only need it once in your life. You don't necessarily have to go to the extravagance of buying it, but if you can borrow it from friends, but certainly with the transceiver, just know how it works. Shovels are pretty straightforward. Probes, again, if you want to read up on how it works, digging snow holes, things like that. But, for me, when I first went out there, I didn't know a huge amount. All I did was just meet locals, like-minded people, because there's areas you'll see that, you think, oh my God, there's some epic powder there. Why is it not tracked out? There's probably a very, very good reason it's not tracked out. So if you've got somewhere where you've got, glacier, you've got crevasses and things like that. You go to Chamonix, where James spent a lot of his time, go up in the Valley Blanche, we're skiing around, going through everyone else's tracks, and it's like, oh my God, there's such good snow over there. The guy's like, no, don't go over there, because there's a very good reason. So, find groups of people that have been out there, they've got local knowledge, not just some dude, just someone that's about, this is my third season out here.
Yeah, not Rasta Stevie.
No, just find someone that knows what they're doing and go out with them, but just know how the equipment works. At the very least, the transceiver, and wear it close to the body, don't wear it on the outside, and just get familiar with that sort of kit. Again, when I was learning to ski off piste, so particularly in Colorado, we had a lot of snow. We had very, very skinny skis. It took a long time to sort of not master, but get fairly confident in the technique. Whereas nowadays you can get a ski 120 mil underfoot, with a big old rocker on it, and basically you just go in a straight line and it's going to lift you out of the snow. So you can get off piste and enjoy that a lot sooner, which maybe means you don't learn all the right techniques and all the safety things involved that maybe we did 25, 30 years ago. So, just be safe.
Most avalanche victims are from within view of a lift.
Yeah.
So as well. So everyone seems to think that those avalanche problems happen in the deep, deep back country, which is of course where they can do. But actually most victims are from within view of a lift. So it was in that resort space, because people just go off and charge at the side after loads of snow. They're not wearing this, they get buried under something and they don't get out. So
it's skiing with, there's the off-piste aspect, but also skiing through trees. If you clatter even a small tree, when you fall, you get this big canopy of space underneath trees. So if you're going through trees, just stay within eye shot of your friends. Make sure you've got your phones and they're charged. Make sure you've got good insurance.
Yeah, well, I had that in Big White. I had I smashed a carbon helmet. This is about 12 years ago or so. I hitting a rock when it tail slapped off of a drop. But the other thing was I went into a tree well, and the guys didn't see me go in. They'd have never known where I was.
No, and the snow falls on top of you, and that's it. And so you just stay visible. It's just using common sense.
So that's kind of like an insurance policy, having those three things. You wear the transceiver here, shovel and probe goes in the backpack, or even on your body if you really want, if you've got big enough jacket pockets. And then the last thing that you could add to that, obviously you need a decent backpack if you're going out to do a season, right? A decent backpack. But this one is an airbag. So this is the holy grail if you are going to look for that powder and you want to ski off piste and you're going to play around in avalanche terrain, then you've got the airbag. This is the kind of latest one from Autovox. This is the new Litric. If you're going for an airbag nowadays, and again we'll go into this more in the February one, but you want to go electric rather than canister, no real debate on that, is there?
Yeah, it's the norm now.
Yeah, you usually get 2 or 3 pulls on electric one now. You don't have to buy new canisters. Your mate won't get annoyed with you if you pull it in the gondola and he's got no more canisters.
Annoyed,
yeah. So
you still got to pack it.
I did that to Maeve in Morzine once.
Yes.
Yeah, that was quite funny when he tried to get out of the gondola, pulled his airbag, and then he couldn't get out. And then the lift, he was so annoyed as I ran off. Anyway, so that's kind of a few bits and bobs of kind of the necessities that you really should be considering. Then we're just going to get into anything else before we go into skis and bindings?
No.
Beer money?
Well, credit cards, having dad's creded cards is always handy, but like I said a bit with insurance, you just make sure you're protected. Sometimes you do get in a situation where people get hurt, and sometimes having a credit card there to get yourself sorted out quickly, and you can always claim it back. It's not a necessity. I never had one, but I think nowadays they're easy to get, and just have it for those emergencies, not just buying rounds. But that's it really. I say, just doing some research on insurance. Maybe the companies you're working with will supply that, or they'll make us some sort of recommendation. It's just covering yourself, for your own liability.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. And then obviously the kind of cool part of going to do seasons is you're going to spend a lot of time on skis and in your boots. And the next one in December is all about boots. So we're not going to touch on boots too much today. But one thing very quickly is you might want to consider a hybrid boot if you want to try a bit of everything. So if you're skiing across the mountain, you want to do a bit of ski touring, maybe you consider a hybrid. We've done a lot more hybrids recently,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
But especially for Seasonaires. But it's skis and bindings. So as the man who has owned too many pairs of skis, probably over the years, if I was going to do a ski season, one of the first questions that we ask people here that come in and ask us for advice is how many pairs of skis you are taking. The normal answer is, oh, I didn't. One? Why would I have more? Right? Yeah. And so for me, there's two you really have a minimum, especially if you're going to do like an instructor course. You've got to have a piste performance ski. And the reason I've grabbed a couple of these is because you don't have to break the bank, especially if you're coming to ski shops this time of the year, early in the season, before you go out to do your season. Because you can get a really good deal on, say, last year's pair if you don't want to go into the latest and greatest and newest products that are out there. So you've got a really high performance piste ski there. And then I've got myself here a really nice kind of big free ride, 108 underfoot. This is a Scott C. This is an ex-demo one as well we have in. So again, can lend this to friends because I can move the binding a little bit. Doesn't add much weight by having a demo binding on there. Again, so if you're going with a few friends, maybe you can share skis around the few of you as well if you have this type of binding. So as a minimum, I would have a piste performance ski and a free ride ski. Personally, I would have at least 4 pairs of skis, and just like bikes, having the right ski just helps you access the right terrain and enjoy it more. And that's what Simon mentioned earlier, is that the big fat skis give you access to that off-piste so you can enjoy it more. It's easier to do it on those big fat skis. But I got to have a piste ski, a freestyle ski for the park, probably an all-mountain / touring setup, and then a free ride setup as well. They're the 4 minimum you can get away with if you need to persuade mum, dad, or partner, right?
Yeah. Well, in the real world, most of us take 1 pair of skis out for the season. So, you know, having something, a multi-utility, do anything ski. So something like this. Okay, it's not going to give you the high performance, rapid edge turning that maybe a ski instructor would like. But if you're going out to do a ski season, you're working in a bar, you're working in a chalet, something like that, a ski around about 90, 95 underfoot. You know, when we say the numbers, it refers to the width underfoot here. You generally find most piste orientated specific skis around about sort of 65 to 75 underfoot, certainly for Europe skiing, and then all mountain sort of 80 to 95, and then certainly free ride 100 plus. So something sub 100, you know, something like the Enforcer here. This is the Enforcer 94 from Nordica. You know, this will ski quite happily all day, every day on piste, but it will give good flotation in powdery snow. You know, if you've got 1 ski, you know, personally, I would go slightly narrower. You know, I'm much more of a fan of the narrow skis, but that's the generation I learned to ski. So for me, I'd probably go 85 to 90 because I know I can ski in powdery snow on that sort of width. It'll be more hard work, but you know, budget-wise, if that's where you're at, then I would, you know, something 85 to 95 underfoot, and that will work in most conditions quite well. There'll be better skis for off-piste, there'll be better skis for on-piste, but for a 1 ski, it's a really, really good option.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can do it. You don't have to have the multitude of skis I'm talking about. Of course, you can do it on 1 ski, but if you're going to get 1 ski, make sure it's a really good all-rounder, a bit like that Nordica there. And I agree, I would say probably for me, about 94 underfoot. Maybe 90 if you wanted like a twin tip or something, an all-mountain.
Yeah, but you got 4 pairs, so you can do it.
Well, that's fair, that's true. That's fine. And then binding-wise, so I've got, there's a number of bindings. I really, really like the cast pivot system for a hybrid binding, but this is our best seller, and this is also a brilliant binding. So if you want the ability to do ski touring, but you're going to ski alpine most of the time, this is our best seller and gets the best feedback, the best reviews across the board as a generalist. So this is the Salomon S-Lab Shift, which comes in 10 and 13 from a DIN perspective. If you're a real high chargy skier that wants your DIN on kind of 11 or above, then you will need to consider a slightly stronger option. But the Shift is a really good hybrid binding if you want that ability to ski tour, especially if you're taking 1 ski and you want that ability to kind of do everything. So that's a good one. But our personal favourite bindings, Simon, are?
The pivots. So we have a variety of the Look pivot. It's been around for 50 years, very, very trendy now. My first and only pair of skis that I bought had Look Forza bindings back in 1992. We do very, very well with them. They're certainly on point as far as fashion goes, but they are really, really good. Very, very close mounting point. Extremely tough. We do quite a variety from DIN 11 up to, I think, 18 is the top one that
18.
we sell. They've also upgraded this year, so on the Pivot 2 we can now replace brakes, which wasn't an option, which was a very expensive nightmare, but that's now been sorted out. And then also, we've worked now with Cast for several years, so Cast have reworked the existing Pivot into a free tour binding, so you can slide the toe off, have the tech inserts, you can unlock the heel as well. They've literally just arrived. I haven't put one on a demo, but we'll show you one at a later date. But they are great. But we also sell normal Alpine bindings from Salomon, sometimes branded as Armada and Atomic, but it's a Salomon binding. We have the Lux here, we have Marker, the Griffin, Digester, and the lighter weight Squire. And then we have the Tyrolia Attacks, which is all part of the head group. So you'll see that on a lot of the Fisher skis as well, but it's a Tyrolia binding. And we have the Attack Hybrid, which is, again, another new hybrid binding that's just arrived. So we'll talk about that in a later episode. So there are lots of options out there. In my experience, if you're binding a ski, and if it's not a system ski, i.e. the binding comes with the ski, it gives you a lot of option. And people, maybe somebody's had a bit of a problem with a look binding in the past, it's not released or whatever, and they got psychologically don't fancy it, go with your gut. There are no bad bindings. All the independent tests are done, generally favour one brand over another. If there was one brand better than all the others, we'd sell one brand in 50 different colours. It would get rid of so many headaches that I have every day. But the pivots we do really well with. We've got many, many different colours. And then you've also got, you go on Instagram, there's a company called Crasher who do customisation of these bindings as well. It's not cheap, but you can have anything put on it. They're awesome. But so that's the pivot system by look. And again, 50 years old, but still working really, really well.
Yeah, and in all the coolest colours. And so, you'll see a lot of people, especially if you're travelling to North America, using kind of pivot bindings. I like them. The reason I like them the most is because of the turntable heel directly underneath the knee. And so if you've had lots of knee injuries like I have, it's a safer way to kind of fall backwards, and the binding will release under the knee to help your ACL. That pretty much wraps up our kind of Seasonaire chat. We thought we'd finish the podcast with a few like what's hot, what's not, and maybe like the story or the weirdest thing of the week. So what's hot right now, Simon?
Well, we're sort of now 8 weeks into boot fitting season. We're doing pretty well. We've had a couple of surprises. I think in that recreational market, the new the Dalbello, the Veloce Space has proven to be a very important boot for us. It kind of bridges the gap between the normal medium volume and the high volume boots. It's quite generous, but it comes with a height mode. It's a really beefy flex as well. So if you're price conscious, the 100 flex Veloce, it's a really, really keen price point, and you get a lot for your money. Obviously, Boa's on pretty much everything, and dual Boa as well. We still do have 4-clip boots. Some of the other new things from Atomic, the TX, the Redster TX, I think is quite a game changer. It's harping on back to the older style of boots with the heavier shell.
Yeah. Okay.
The boots have been getting lighter and lighter, and boots have got stiffer. They're using stiffer plastics but thinner plastics. And when you try on the TX, now it's not a massive volume seller for us, but it's a thicker, heavier plastic, so it gives it a softer, more progressive feel. And I've got a feeling going forward in some of the top end, maybe wider boots in the MV 100 Last, and certainly 103. I think if some of the brands drop that plastic back in, I think it'd be really, really good rather than a really lightweight, very, very stiff style. But certainly the Redster TX for me has been one of my favourites going out this year. But obviously there's all the talks about Boa. Boa for the last 3 years has been really, really good. It's not for everybody, but there's certainly the positives way outweigh the negatives. Certainly the Boa on the lower clog, we've had very, very little resistance. It's worked really well with a variety of different foot shapes. The upper Boa, the second, the dual Boa, it's new. We're getting used to it. It's going really, really well. But I still envisage us selling a lot of either boots with 2 clips or even 4 clips next year as well. I think maybe it will get tweaked a little bit, but it's certainly, it's a great idea. It's good to have some new innovation in ski boots as well. So that's very exciting.
Well, it's a bit like we're going back in time. We're going back to cable system boots and heavier boots for performance. So, which is what we've always done over the years.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think, there's been a lot of innovation, and certainly with the hybrid market, everything's got lightweight, and that's trickled into the mainstream boots. And having super lightweight, they're definitely positives for walking around and things. But in some of the boots, I think a slightly heavier, thicker plastic would give with some of the boots a bit more of a forgiving flex. But that's just my
and less
personal
shell
thing.
compression, perhaps. As
Absolutely, we're 8 weeks into the ski season. My views may change as we go through the season. But we always make suggestions to brands whether they listen or not. We're a small retailer, but I think if enough of us that work in the industry make these comments, then they will make changes. There's lots of things going on in the background, but I mean, ultimately, the quality of the liners, the standard liners you get with boots now are so much better. Obviously we sell aftermarket, zip fit, foam, intuition, they work really, really well. But less and less are we grabbing those now for brand new boots. We still are for a few people, but certainly the standard liners you get, like the Mimics from Atomic, they're so well made, really, really well made. And so what you're getting is for your standard boot now, it does hold up for a season. Whereas in the past, you'd say that someone going for a ski season would be like, right, let's bin that liner, whack in a zip fit, another £300 on top of the price of the boot. We're not having to do that so much now. But obviously, people, if you've done a season and you go out for a second season, if the shell's good, you've looked after it, you haven't worn out the grip walk soles, maybe that's the time to put the aftermarket liner in. It's certainly going to be cheaper than a new pair of boots, and it will make the boots fit really, really well.
Okay, cool. So hot for you is the new ski boot technology available to all these Seasonaires going through a whole season, and some of the more durable boots, like you mentioned, the Atomic TX, will actually last like a good kicking during a season, as opposed to some of the lightweight ones. And I guess my what hot right now is probably, I would say, North America. So when I was 20 years ago, when I was out doing seasons, everyone went to Europe, right? And pretty much everyone that came in here was going to Europe as well. Now, I would say more people we speak to are going to North America, Japan, those types of places, right? So they seem to be a bit hotter. I think they're partly due to Brexit, but also the costs, flights now are a lot less than they used to be, like for the transatlantic flights. So it's making it more accessible to people.
Yeah, I think, for a lot of the holiday makers, going out, say, somewhere like Colorado, with how the lift passes are working, for that one trip a year, it can be very expensive. But, if you're lucky to be out there for a season, or if you're doing multiple trips, then, it is very viable. The skiing is incredible. It's generally very, very high. So, certainly my experience in Colorado, maybe not so much on the East Coast. And then, Canada, again, for Brits going out to do a season and working, Canada's part of the Commonwealth. It's still quite straightforward to go and do that, as is obviously New Zealand as well. But, this year and last year, we just noticed a lot going to Japan, again, when I was back in the 90s, when I was young, doing a lot of skiing, nobody went to Japan. It wasn't even on the radar. Whereas now, it's just epic. So,
get some Japan.
Yeah, exactly. It's a place that I'd like to visit.
Cool. And what's not hot for Seasonaires, in your opinion?
What's not hot? Ooh.
You don't want to be featured on Jerry of the Day, that's for sure.
Well, no, that's right. We didn't rehearse that question, did we? I mean, obviously, the goggle gap, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, no, you can't have punter gap. Can't have that. Yeah, if you look in the mirror with your helmet and your goggles and you've got this big gap, don't go and do a season until you fix it, because you will just get ribbed the whole time.
I think for me as well, someone that's invested in a hybrid boot, a hybrid binding, a pair of Black Crows, and then not buying skins, that's not hot. If you're going to commit and do it properly, then you do it properly. So we do have people that come in and they will buy that setup and then say, yeah, what skins do you want? No, I don't want skins.
Yeah, it's not cool to go out on your season, have all the gear and have no idea how to use it. That's
I think one of the other things as well, we worked with several ski instructors, and Warren Smith being one of them, who's a very well-known guy in the UK. And talking to him, it's fitness and things in skiing is really important, but mobility even more so. We notice a lot when we're boot fitting. People with very tight calf, Achilles, struggle with a lot of the boots. They hold you at quite an acute angle. It's nothing to do with fitness. A lot of runners, they get tight in those areas. Mobility, I think, is a really, really key thing. So good mobility in the ankle, Achilles, calf, and then strength in the hip flexors and things like that. Having mobility in the hips, but also a lot of strength. You see these people that carve on a lot of the videos really well. It's that strength and mobility that makes all the difference. So that's another thing. Maybe not so much for the Seasonaires, because you'll get that as you go along. But if you're going out to do an instructor course, working on that mobility before you get out there is a really big advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. Well, that brings us pretty much to the end of our podcast today. The last thing we said we talk about, I called it the unicorn product, and you were like, what the hell does that mean? But that kind of one product, and I thought it was quite good, you mentioned it earlier, and it's a bit Seasonaire related, especially if you're like me and you want multiple pairs of skis. If you could bring one product back, and this is with a Seasonaire twist on it, what would you bring back and why?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah.
If I was going to take a product...
So what, you bring one product back, which we talked about, and it's written over there. And
I see. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So from the past. Okay. So again, when I was a youngster, God, reactor binding. Now, most of you will not know what that is, but back in the day, I don't know if any of you are familiar with J Skis. Jason, who runs that, started off line skis, and they were, one of the first cool twin tip freestyle free ride brands. And for a brief period, they brought out a reactor binding, so it was their own binding. But effectively, what you did was you bought a ski, and it kind of looked like a snowboard. It had the mounts preset into the base. Now, I know you can get things like quiver kills and freedom inserts, but the skis came with that. So there's a very, very small mounting point. You had 4 screws, took about that much space up, and then the binding could really float on the ski. And you could buy a skinny, short freestyle ski. You could buy a big, fat free ride ski, and you'd have one binding. You just literally undid 4 screws, put it in there, exactly the same as changing the snowboard binding. It gave people a huge amount of versatility, a lot less packing, and also saved a lot of money. Unfortunately, there were issues with the reactor binding, and then there were issues with line as well. But I think there's no reason why the brands couldn't do something with the existing product. 70% of the skis we sell come with some sort of track system. So why can you not buy one binding and move it across? Now there are alternatives. There are inserts you can retrofit into skis. We've seen problems with those. A lot of people swear by them. They're absolutely great. But if they could do it during the manufacturing process, that would make it much more secure. So for me, a twist, an alternative to how the reactor binding worked. Those of you who remember it was a great idea. There were issues with the binding didn't hold the boots properly, but these things could have been ironed out. But unfortunately, line like so many small companies just don't have the money behind them that the big guys do. So maybe that will come again one day.
There you go. So if we could bring a unicorn product back, which was great for Seasonaires, like it would have been brilliant if I could have had one binding to put across all my different sets of skis. It would have just made life a bit cheaper as much as anything else.
And also less packing. You can slide in. You can get your 4 pairs of skis in quite easily. You can probably get 14 jackets in there as well. So and also you're less likely to get stuff nicked if you only got one set of bindings on the skis. And I think it's just a good idea.
Take your bindings off at lunchtime.
Well, exactly. You stick it in your backpack. Off you go.
Cool. Well, there you go. So thanks for joining us on our very first podcast, which will also be on YouTube. That was our first one. So that was a bit more focused on Seasonaires. People are going out to do the season this year. A few things to consider. A little bit of banter from us. If there's anything you'd like on the next one, do it. Simon was getting carried away on ski boots there, so I can't wait to the amount of things he's going to talk about on December's podcast, which is going to be all about ski boots. So thanks for joining us. See you on the next one, guys.
Cheers.